What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Tales from the Shelf, and today we are going to be talking about a movie called I Saw the TV Glow. Now, if you were in the know, then you probably are aware that this movie came out a couple months back, and I'm only just now getting the opportunity to discuss it because the rental price finally dropped from $20 to around $6. I've been wanting to check this out ever since I saw the first trailer, and I finally got to check it out. It was not playing in any theaters near me whatsoever, so here we are, and there's a good chance that if you're watching this, then you are in a similar situation and actually just rented it yourself, because I feel like a lot of people are not really willing to pay that $20 rental fee. I know I'm not. Anyway, all that stuff aside, I am super excited to talk about this movie. I have a good amount of thoughts on it, so let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the movie follows a young character named Owen, who is seemingly pretty shy, doesn't seem to have a ton of friends, and it details his interactions with this girl who goes to his school, who's a little bit older than him, who introduces him to this TV show. The TV show is called The Pink Opaque, and it is very much in line with my favorite TV show of all time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The way that the TV show is shot in the movie is very reminiscent of how early to late 90s horror and sci-fi shows were filmed. It has that sort of low budget kind of feel to it while also being very much 90s. Like, you can look at a clip of it and be like, okay, that's from the 90s, like without even having to think about it. Something down to the way people dressed, to just the way that film looked back then. You could tell it's a very 90s aesthetic. And they capture that so well here. I haven't yet mentioned the director of this film, Jane Schoenbrunn. I believe that's how you pronounce their name. I'm not 100% sure, so please forgive me if that is incorrect. So this show is, like I said, very reminiscent of something like Buffy. The references to Buffy are very apparent, down to the plot of the show. Some of the weapons that the characters in the show use seem very Buffy coded. They're always holding like an axe or something like that. The fact that the two leads of the show are female leads me to believe that it's obviously very Buffy influenced. Then the moment I knew that they were doing Buffy was when there's a scene in the film where they're doing the show, The Pink Opaque, and it's got the credits font from Buffy. It's the exact same font. I've seen that show so many times that I was able to pick it up right away. And then, spoiler alert, but then later on in the film, you get a cameo, very brief cameo from Amber Benson, who plays Tara in Buffy. So if there was any doubt by that point, I was like, okay, this is very much, you know, a love letter to Buffy and shows like Buffy. The way that this movie makes you feel is really interesting because it's something that seems to be made to appeal to those of my age group, but I could also see the younger generation being able to appreciate this as well, despite not having those same associations with shows like this. But it deals with a lot of different themes that we're going to get into. The first one that struck me by the end of it was how there is a plot element where Owen and the girl, I think her name's Maddie, she disappears after a while, and he goes like a decade without seeing her. And then she comes back and she tries to convince him that she's been inside the show, The Pink Opaque, and that their reality is false, and that in order to join her in The Pink Opaque, where he belongs, he needs to, effectively what he needs to do is kill himself by burying himself alive. So there's a lot of like metaphors and stuff. Like, when I say that on its face, it seems pretty crazy, but the film plays with reality in very interesting ways, and like what we deem to be like just normal behavior for everyday life, and then what it actually, like what you know in your heart you really should be doing. It's really conceptually working on a lot of different levels. I already feel like I need to like rewatch this film. With that being said, there's this feeling that it's almost like it's this very relatable feeling that I feel like a lot of us can appreciate, of knowing that you're supposed to be somebody else, and the situations surrounding your life and, you know, your family and your friends and where you live all kind of dictate who you actually have to comport yourself as in everyday life. And so it's like the struggle of that dichotomy where you know you're supposed to be somebody else inside, but you're just not able to do that. And so I know the director, Jane Schoenbrunn, is a trans person, and so this is not something that I can speak to personally because I haven't had that lived experience, but watching the film and knowing that, I could see what they were doing as far as that all being a metaphor for maybe the trans experience. Again, I don't want to speak too much on this because it's really not my place to, but it's something that I was able to appreciate while watching the film. The other thing that I thought was really cool about this movie is the way that in sort of hiding who you really are, you can waste decades and decades of your life. Like they talk about your life slipping away from you in the blink of an eye, and then before you know it, you're an old man and you've wasted it. You wasted your life and you haven't lived the way you were supposed to. So that was a thing that, regardless of your gender identity or your sexuality or anything like that, that's an idea that is that's something that is universal, that I would like to think many people can relate to that idea. And then sort of wrapped around all of that is this notion of how important a specific piece of media, in this case a TV show, from one's childhood can be, and how that can sort of almost define your personality in many ways and define your tastes and what you're into well into your adulthood. For me, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when I was very young, that was a show that scared me. But then as I realized it wasn't very scary, I started to get into it and I was drawn to it, and then I watched a lot of it and it's become my favorite show. And so the Pink Opaque sort of represents that as well for this young character, Owen, who doesn't have many friends, has a strained relationship with his stepdad, etc. But then he finds the show and he finds this friend who also likes the show, and they develop this relationship. It's not, a romantic one, but I think it's even more important than that because it provides Owen with this sort of sense of like family, and they're able to connect over this piece of media. And it's like, so what can be deemed as like this, silly show that maybe wasn't designed to be so important to somebody, becomes so important to somebody. And, I think we can all pick out a piece of media, maybe it's a song, a movie, a TV show, from our childhood that we've latched onto and, have gone on to become super important for us. So those are all ideas that are like explored in I Saw the TV Glow. And this discussion is probably going to be very scatterbrained because I just watched the film a few days ago and I already feel like I need to see it again. And it's hard to discuss because there's a lot of layered things going on in the film. And I just think it's really great. The music is fantastic. The soundtrack is great. I'm like tempted to buy it on vinyl because of how good it is. I was introduced to a lot of songs and artists on the soundtrack that I had never heard before. And while sitting and watching the film, I was listening to this music, and the film is shot very beautifully as well. So it almost is like a music video in some parts. Like there are some scenes where the film sort of stops, and like you get like a little song, and it's just really cool. There are some things that a buddy of mine pointed out to me about the film that I missed on first watch, and that's how the character Owen is shown from a young age to have asthma, so he's always using an inhaler. And then fast forward a little bit to the plot point about having to bury yourself alive in order to, fully, awaken or whatever, or become who you're meant to be. So the act of being buried alive, that's something that in another reality, in the Pink Opaque, happens to the characters, and it's revealed that he is supposed to be one of the main characters. So in a sense, he was buried alive. And so the inhaler is meant to suggest that he's always had trouble breathing. I thought that was a really interesting concept, and hopefully if you've seen the film, you understand what I'm talking about, because if you haven't and you're listening to me talk right now, it's probably going to be very confusing, and I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining it, but trust me, the film is doing a lot of things, and it's just really cool to like think about and kind of pick them apart. Circling back to like the Buffy motifs, it's really cool because in the show, they talk a little bit about it. They talk about how there's like Monsters of the Week and something called the Big Bad, which is like explicitly used in Buffy to describe the sort of the big bads, the bosses or the bad guys of each season. And right away, you know, they talk about that stuff early on, and I'm like watching and I'm like, oh, this is like Buffy, huh? Interesting. And then as you keep watching, they continue to do more and more overt references to Buffy and shows like Buffy. And I just thought that was great. I was very much felt like I was being marketed to directly in a way. So I'm not going to go on too long about this. I feel like I mostly talked about the points that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I saw the TV Glow. It's just super nostalgic. It reminded me of, you know, it sort of like reaffirmed my love for Buffy and like made me feel very vindicated. And, you know, obviously I know that show has a ton of fans, but seeing that subject matter approached in this way in this film really kind of served to highlight and like elevate something like that and really, you know, drive home how important media like that is. So if you've seen I Saw the TV Glow, please leave me a comment down below. I want to hear your thoughts on the film. What did you personally take away from it? This feels like a movie that's designed to elicit a certain response from people, and in a way we've all sort of had a shared upbringing, because I feel like a lot of us can relate to what's going on in this movie, and we all have that piece of media, like the Pink Opaque, like Buffy, that deeply resonates with us still to this day. So yeah, like I said, please leave me a comment, like the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. We talk about movies and lots of different stuff over here, physical media, horror mostly, but a little bit of, you know, other stuff here and there, so check it out. And with all of that being said, please take care and watch more movies.